Well, hello and welcome back to the Lamppost Listener. My name is Daniel.
I'm Phil.
And this is a podcast where we chronicle transcendent truth by traveling further up and further into the classic works of children's literature.
This is Season 10, Episode 6, The Wolves, which covers Chapter 6 of The Hobbit. Or as you used to say, The Woofs. You've really come a long way. Look at you now.
I've been working so hard over these 10 seasons of the show.
You don't even have to sit in your car for an hour beforehand getting psyched up beforehand.
just thinking about how to...
Daniel's actually a super quiet guy.
It's very hard. I just sit there and I listen to metal until I get amped up enough to come in here.
You kind of punch the back seat.
Exactly. We've got a fun... I wonder if this will be a shorter episode just because this is one of those chapters where it always has felt to me... I like this chapter quite a bit in the book, but it feels kind of like a bit of a letdown after all that occurred. And I mean this both in the actual book itself, but then also what we covered last time with last chapter, where we went through the riddles in the dark and Gollum and the finding of the ring. And now this one's like, we're going to escape from some wolves.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, did we read the same chapter? Because there were multiple fire bombs, goblins and wolves, and some eagles.
No, and I guess the way I'm thinking of it is, as we attempt to read this book kind of on its own terms, as its own story, outside of the larger context of Middle-earth, this feels more like a one-off adventure, like many of the other chapters have felt, as opposed to last chapter, which felt very much connected to the deeper mythology of Tolkien.
Like when the studio insists on adding a couple more episodes to the lineup because it's performing so well, but it doesn't actually connect to the overall greater plot.
That, or just when you come across the 26-episode season in a TV show, and you're like, well, this is a lot of episodes here, but the show was doing well, so they just gave them a couple extra ones.
Yeah.
Well, it is an even chapter, Phil, so you have the summary. Why don't you go ahead and read that for us as we dive into this chapter?
A summary of Chapter 6. Bilbo is just about to return to the tunnels in search of his friends, when suddenly he hears them nearby, talking about him. Aided by the ring, he sneaks up on them and surprises them all by suddenly appearing. They are all impressed, but Gandalf seems aware that Bilbo isn't telling them the complete story. The dwarves and Gandalf reveal how they escape from the goblins using fire and lights, and then participate in a rock slide down a steep hill. They are chased into trees by wolves, and when goblins catch up with them, they set the tree ablaze. Hopeless, Gandalf prepares to go out in a last-ditch effort, but is saved by an eagle. The whole group is whisked away and provided a meal. Glad to be away from the Misty Mountains, they fall asleep upon the rocky terrain.
All right. So we begin with Bilbo escaping and making it all the way out. As he says, he realized that the sun is setting behind the mountains. He realized, wait a second. I'm on the eastern side of the mountains. I think as I read this for the first time, Phil, I almost took it for granted that, well, of course he'd come out on the other side. I'm like, actually, that's not, I'm like, well, because the story moves east, right? Like every chapter we get further east as we get closer to the mountain. But as I read it through, more closely for the podcast, I was like, oh, yeah, that would be a little bit more surprising. And I guess let me just pause before we actually dive into this. Any big kind of larger takeaways that you had reading this chapter? Any kind of bigger themes or ideas that you wanted to hone in on before we look at it kind of piece by piece?
I was really struck by the way this chapter resolves, where it really does seem hopeless, and how we almost lose Gandalf. And then we're saved by these outside characters that we didn't really know about. Mm-hmm. But it feels like it works. And it also, in some ways, sets us up for the Lord of the Rings and how characters are helped by eagles again. But I've joked a lot about the eagles. I don't know if it's been on this show, but it just kind of seems like a Deus Ex Machina type thing. I really think that reading this closer and remembering the details showed me that it's not as funny. It actually makes a lot of sense. These eagles are very powerful, but they can't do everything. They stay away from men because men shoot arrows at them. Yep. And they don't have to help. And so they choose not to quite often. And it's a special thing that happens when they do choose to help. It feels less like I have to figure out how to end this story or how to get these characters out of it, and more. It just feels more realistic, which is strange to say for a fantasy novel.
Interestingly enough, I was reading as just thinking about the eagles, and I know we'll talk more about them when they appear in this chapter. But I was reading. Oh, now I can't remember if it was either in the history of the Hobbit or if it was in the annotated Hobbit at this point. But one of those two great books, which we've been looking at a lot in this season, mentioned that eagles really don't appear much in ancient or medieval like mythology and folklore, at least in European mythology and folklore, both in the ancient and in the medieval world. They do appear in some places. There's some eagles with Zeus in Greek mythology, and then they certainly appear in places outside of Europe, lots of eagles in the folklore of like Native Americans, for instance. But in the medieval world particularly, which obviously Tolkien is focusing quite a bit on, as he's pulling a lot of the imagery out of there, it's much more falcon and hawk related.
Huh.
And so in some ways, there isn't a kind of preconceived notion of, like, we might think of, eagles as being this kind of good thing, especially as Americans, right? Eagles, good, right? Those are good animals, right? You'd say like a snake, bad animal, eagle, good animal, right? Like just think about like how we, with folklore, right? Yeah. Even go back to something like Harry Potter, right? My son knows that Slytherin's bad because the snake is their mascot, and Gryffindor's good because the lion is theirs, right? We kind of have these associations, right? Just because of
they're built in.
They've been handed down to us.
In the zeitgeist.
Exactly. Well, eagles are much more prominently good in our kind of cultural context, again, especially as Americans, because it's like it's the American animal, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in the medieval world, they are much more kind of neutral in a way. They're neither good nor bad. The kind of more, like I just mentioned, the quote-unquote good birds of kind of mythology would be the hawks and the falcons. They're used more often. And so, again, I wonder if some of the disconnect we have, we're like, why are these eagles they're kind of like ambiguous in their morality. Like they're not really, they're certainly not bad guys, but they're also not really like super willing to help out the heroes, right? Especially later on, like you mentioned in Lord of the Rings. They're not like, if the whole world depends on it, we'll definitely help you. They're like, it doesn't really affect us. I don't know if we're really going to help. And so that's a little bit also where Tolkien's, I think, might be pulling from. And that's where, in some ways it's funny because he's a modern writer, obviously writing in the 20th century, but there's a little bit of that, whenever you read something that's centuries old, and there's certain just parts that without understanding the context, you might be missing out on your understanding. There are some assumptions you're making that the author isn't making. I mean, this happens all the time, like something like with Dante, for instance, right? There's many assumptions he's making about Florentine politics that you and I aren't making when we read the comedy. We're just like, that's just not how we think of politics, right? Yeah. Similar kind of thing for Tolkien because he's writing more like a medieval than he is a modern.
That's interesting.
Well, I want to read just a little bit here at the beginning because the chapter starts off with a very, I think, important exchange. First, before Bilbo actually meets back up with people, he does get worried. He's all alone. He's getting pretty worried, but he actually makes a really important decision. He decides that, his friends, or I don't even know if he would call him his friends right now, his colleagues, if you will, might still be stuck back in the mountain, and he has an invisible ring. And so the narrator tells us makes up his mind that it was his duty that he would turn back, and he felt very miserable about it, but then he actually hears voices. So he's decided in the first 3 or 4 paragraphs of the chapter, I need to go back. I don't want to. I've just escaped, but it's my duty to go back. But then he actually comes upon the dwarves. I want to maybe read just a little bit of what he uncovers. Gandalf was arguing with the dwarves. They were discussing all that had happened to them in the tunnels and wondering and debating what they were to do now. The dwarves were grumbling, and Gandalf was saying that they could not possibly go on with their journey, leaving Mr. Baggins in the hands of the goblins, without trying to find out if he was alive or dead, and without trying to rescue him.
After all, he is my friend, said the wizard, and not a bad little chap. I feel responsible for him. I wish to goodness you had not lost him.
The dwarves wanted to know why he'd been brought at all, why he could not stick to his friends and come along with them, and why the wizard had not chosen someone with more sense.
"He's been more trouble than you so far,"
said one.
"If we had got to go back now into those abominable tunnels to look for him, then drat him, I say."
Gandalf answered angrily.
"I brought him, and I don't bring things that are of no use. Either you help me to look for him, or I can go and leave you here to get out of the mess as best you can yourselves. If we can only find him again, you will thank me before all is over. Whatever did you want to go in and drop him for, Dory?"
And then Dory responds here and says, you would have dropped him too. It was not my fault. And we have this kind of a little bit of going back and forth. Bilbo's obviously is actually witnessing all of this. He's invisible. He just made his mind to go back and save all of them. Yeah. And the dwarves are like, he's not worth going back for.
There's also different use of the word friends. You brought this up kind of at the beginning, but Bilbo decided to go back and search for his friends. Gandalf calls him his friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dwarves are thinking, why can't he stick to his friends? But they all seem to mean something different.
The dwarves are certainly saying, he didn't stick to us, his friends.
Yeah.
But they're not acting like a friend. Like, I don't know, it's worth going back.
And maybe this is just how dwarves are, where they're a little bit on the grumpier side and a little less likely. But I think the biggest thing is Bilbo feels like he's more part of the group than they feel he's part of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about to flip. And it's a really fun change that happens when he impresses them in this way.
Yeah, this is the moment. This is, we mentioned that even back in some of the earlier chapters, we see a little bit of Bilbo helping, right? I mean, he doesn't really help much with the trolls. He does at least give a shout when the goblins in chapter 4 begin coming out of the crack, and that allows Gandalf to escape. And then he was by himself in chapter 5. But here, he actually begins to get their own respect. He actually gets their respect because as he steps in, he takes off the ring and he says, "And here's the burglar," right? And obviously, all of them are really thrown off. And maybe I should actually read this one more paragraph here for us. "Bless me, how they jumped. Then they shouted with surprise and delight. Gandalf was as astonished as any of them, but probably more pleased than all the others. He called to Balin and told him what he thought of a lookout man who let people walk right into them like that without warning. It is a fact that Bilbo's reputation went up a very great deal with the dwarves after this. If they had still doubted that he was really a first-class burglar, in spite of Gandalf's words, they doubted no longer. Balin was the most puzzled of all, but everyone said it was a very clever bit of work." And what's funny is as his reputation goes up, he kind of cheated. He uses a magic ring to get past all of them. And while he doesn't really tell him the dwarves the entire story of how he got this ring, he didn't really get it by stealing it either. He just lucked upon it. It's all been Bilbo's luck that this has occurred.
Yeah. I love the line, "Bless me, how they jumped." And the way it ends with, everyone said it was a clever bit of work. You can almost feel them slapping each other on the back and talking about it and reciting it over and over and over again.
And Bilbo's quite nonchalant about the whole adventure.
Well, I think he's wise.
Oh yeah, no.
He doesn't give away his trick. Someone pulled me aside recently and said, if you're successful at something, don't tell anybody how you're doing it, because it, I guess, gives you more leverage or something.
We shouldn't tell people that we have scripts we're reading off of right now. We've been successful because we pre-write this entire thing, jokes and all.
Daniel died 5 years ago, and I've been feeding it into an AI. That's why on your deathbed I had you say all the vowels and all the consonants.
He's like, just read these letters for me, please. But one of the things that Bilbo does too, which is great. At one point they're like, "How'd you get past?" He's like, "Weren't there a bunch of guards?" And one of the dwarves asks, and he's like, "Oh yeah, but I got past them."
I just went around.
but yeah, they were there, but I mean, I was able to get out. And I think what's funny, what's unclear to me is how clever Bilbo is purposefully, or how much actually this is just working in his favor as he is trying to not tell them a lot about what actually happened. Like he's being, he's withholding some information from them. Now he's withholding it because he doesn't want to tell them all about the ring. At least that's why I think he's withholding it. But the dwarves almost seem to think he's withholding it because he just doesn't think it's all that great of a story. He's like, well, it's not that big of a deal. I just got past them all,
Yeah.
And so they almost respect him more for that.
That's brilliant. Another great character moment is that I think Bilbo wants to be cool and he wants to be a part of the group. And the best line he can come up with is, "And here's the burglar." This reminds me so much of high school. You finally get your shot to kind of enter this group of people that you look up to, and then you say something kind of basic. There were so many opportunities where he could have waited for them to say a certain line and then respond with it in a way that surprises them all. But he just says, "And here's the burglar."
Yeah. So then kind of this conversation continues. We actually learn a little bit from Gandalf about kind of where he had gotten away to, because he had escaped obviously when he heard Bilbo scream. And by the way, at one point, this is great. He says, Gandalf is saying kind of how he had to escape and use magic. He says it's very ticklish business was his lines. Touch and go. Very ticklish business to get out of there. I feel like this is the kind of line you would not have seen in Lord of the Rings. At no point does Gandalf say, "I was fighting Sauron. Very ticklish business that was." Spoiler alert. Sorry, Sauron's actually secretly bad. He's been viewing the Palantir and has kind of been tempted and seduced by Sauron by using that Palantir. Palantir? How do you actually pronounce it?
Palantir.
Palantir.
Yeah.
You only know that because of the tech world, don't you? Yeah. How is that not trademarked?
It's not is it capitalized? Is Palantir capitalized in the?
Oh, maybe it's not. I don't think it is.
I don't know.
Because it's like, think about.
But is it a completely new word?
I don't know. Just give the background. I'll look it up. Give the background. People have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah. PayPal was a combination of two startup companies. One was Elon Musk's company, and the other was Peter Thiel's company. After PayPal had a successful exit, they both went their different ways. Elon did SpaceX, bought Tesla, and did a bunch of stuff. And then Peter Thiel made a company called Palantir. They're mostly known for being the people that provide governments with surveillance tools, and it's relatively controversial, I'd say.
Ironic because the Palantirs, right?
One of the most perfectly named things, because
the Palantirs are like these seeing stones.
It
right?
allows you to
Rings.
see what's happening somewhere else. Large security systems, cameras everywhere, etc. But it also will corrupt the viewer, which maybe it was perfectly named.
So they were brought over by the Numenorians. They were originally used for good. They had one like
this is now in Lord of the Rings.
In Lord of the Rings, yeah. No, I don't know. See, I actually didn't know that about the tech company. I knew it had something with like government, but I didn't know anything else about it other than it had a Lord of the Rings name. And they were used. There was one in like the northern parts of Middle Earth. There was obviously one in Minas Tirith. I think there's one in Osgiliath. Well, Osgiliath and Minas Tirith are so close. I don't know. There were different ones around, but eventually they kind of all, when by the time that, I don't know, maybe early Third Age, they kind of fall away and they're found. And part of how both Denethor and Sauron are corrupted is they have Palantirs, but also so does Sauron in, not Orthanc, but in... what's the tower? Orthanc is in Isengard. What's the tower in... Oh, Barad-dûr. Barad-dûr is the one there. So I looked it up as you were writing that. Here you go. Tolkien published, obviously, Lord of the Rings 1950s, before the modern system of trademarking literary terms was common practice.
Okay.
So they did secure copyrights on the text and the fictional world, but not names like Palantir. So it's not a registered trademark. So Palantir was protected under copyright and derivative works law, but not as a trademark. So then it was allowed to be used again by other companies.
Interesting.
I was like, because knowing how particular the Tolkien estate is, about, you can only use Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. We're not even giving the rights to the Silmarillion. It feels weird to be like, oh, but this company, you guys can use some of that stuff instead. That feels a little silly.
Yeah.
But I guess if it wasn't copyrighted.
Yeah. I wondered if it was an age thing.
So let's continue on. We have the conversation ends. We learn a little bit more about this, and it's time to get a move on. What happens as they decide it's time to continue moving east?
So they do a fair bit of explanations from the wizard, just catching him up. And then there's a rock slide. And it actually helps cover their tracks because they fall so far so fast and in such a treacherous area that it's probably going to throw them off their trail if they're trying to catch up with this group. And it does work for a little bit. They keep going for a while, but then they find themselves in this clearing, and there's something about the clearing that gives them a feeling that this is not a good place. And as soon as they have that feeling, a wolf howls, and the group all runs up a tree because they realize that they're surrounded by this group of a very unfriendly group of creatures, I would say.
A great, this may be the last thing I read tonight. I don't want to read too much from this chapter, but really just great bit of Tolkien world building and like Tolkien Hobbit world building, which is, I think, a little distinct from some of his other world building. After we hear the howling, here's what the narrator tells us. It was wolves howling at the moon, wolves gathering together. There were no wolves living near Mr. Baggins's hole at home, but he knew that noise. He'd had it described to him often enough in tales. One of his elder cousins, on the Duke's side, who had been a great traveler, used to imitate it to frighten him. To hear it out in the forest under the moon was too much for Bilbo. Even magic rings are not much use against wolves, especially against the evil packs that lived under the shadow of the goblin-infested mountains, over the edge of the wild on the borders of the unknown. Wolves of that sort smell keener than goblins, and do not need to see you to catch you. What shall we do? What shall we do? Bilbo cried. Escaping goblins to be caught by wolves, he said, and it became a proverb, though we now say out of the frying pan and into the fire, in the same sort of uncomfortable situations. I love that kind of, there's a little bit of this, I guess you might want to call it, there's a little bit of a meta-narrative, or the kind of that turning to that aside to the reader, where we have a little bit of building of the world in the Shire, or, in Middle-earth, where, he doesn't have wolves near him, but a cousin used to do that, and these wolves are different because they're on the edge of the wild. They're a little bit different. They smell like, they smell keener. And then you also have, and then that's actually where we get that phrase out of the frying pan and into the fire from, too, which is very much our world. In fact, I looked it up. That phrase goes back to about the 16th century. So it had been around for centuries, even when Tolkien is using it. We don't really say it very much anymore, but it certainly is it's not a Middle-earth like saying. It's a...
Yeah. Similar to when the game of golf was
exactly.
That's how the game of golf was invented.
So there's a little bit like I really love this because he's building up the world of Middle-earth while directly connecting it to our world, which is quite distinct in The Hobbit than in the rest of his work. He doesn't do that as much, or even really maybe not at all in his other works, where it's like, this is how this world works, and also here's exactly how it's connected to your world.
Yeah. You mentioned a few episodes ago that Tolkien went back and tried to rewrite to match the tone, and that he stopped because it wasn't working. It definitely pulls me a little bit out of the story because they're so different, but this feels more like someone telling me a story orally, just saying it out loud. Mm-hmm. It very much feels like a grandfather in a rocking chair making it up kind of on the spot, or reading out loud to a group, especially when earlier a little bit ago he goes, "Oh, bless me, how they jumped." That just
it's more just casual in general.
Yeah, and I don't want it to change. It's just interesting how different this is from the Lord of the Rings, and I've mentioned this before, but I'm reading the Lord of the Rings again because I finished The Hobbit in preparation for this show for the third time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was enjoying it so much. I went right into the Lord of the Rings, but they're so different.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is similar about the two is that they both have wargs. Are we saying that right? Is that wargs, wargs, wargs? That can't be right.
Wargs.
Warg.
You have war. You have wargs.
Wargs.
Yeah.
Wargs. All right, we'll call them that. Well, they appear in both The Hobbit and in other parts of the Legendarium. Do you know anything about where their name comes from?
I have no clue.
It is. I'll give you 3 guesses. I bet you can get it in 3 guesses. No, knowing. Just where's Tolkien pulling words from?
Old English.
Not Old English.
Old Norse.
Old Norse is correct. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
I
you
was
go.
like, oh, it's either Old English, Anglo-Saxon, or Old Norse. Like those are the 3 I would. No, there could be some like German maybe in there a little bit too, but yeah. No, it's Old Norse. It's Vargr is kind of the word. It's pulled from Varg, and it literally pretty much means wolf in Old German. But here is where Tolkien's use of languages comes in, because it is, I guess Old Norse is early Germanic languages, aren't they? I'm pretty sure actually that the Old Norse languages are Germanic in form. Anyways, but in kind of its original context, it didn't just mean a wolf. It also meant a word that we would probably most associate with the word of like outlaw. So it meant both a literal physical wolf, but could also be used to describe someone who was an outlaw, someone who was kind of out of society, like a beast. And so Tolkien uses that words, both of its meanings. They are literal wolves, right? But they also have this kind of, they're allied with, the dark side. And so they're kind of outside of the good parts of nature. They're living on the outskirts of that, kind of on as these evil beasts.
What a perfect term for them.
It's just so fun. And it's like, Tolkien's like, I'm going to use one word and I'm going to capture all of that. And then no one's going to know it until we write books about this book later on.
Yeah.
I thought that was really fun. These are such fun animals. I've always loved them. I love the depiction of them in kind of all of his different places. And especially here, they do have this sinister thing. I think one of the things I really, really enjoy about them is they clearly speak to one another, but we don't
get to hear
it. The best we get is Gandalf telling us what they're saying. And it does, like, again, it's unclear. When they're speaking, we don't know. Are they like speaking some kind of like actual language that we just don't, the dwarves and Bilbo can't understand? Are they just barking? And that's like, okay, let's pause. When you were a kid, this is a fun question. How old were you when you realized that dogs weren't like barking words at each other? Do you know what I mean? Do you remember this?
I was thrown off by The Far Side. Because that guy, there's a cartoon with this guy walking around. And he has a translator. Yep. He invented a translator that will translate what a dog is saying to human speech. And they're all just saying, hey. Which honestly is probably pretty accurate.
I was maybe like 8 or 9 years old. I was pretty old when I was like, oh, they don't have like a language. I thought they had a language. I will say I didn't have a dog. Like I didn't grow up with a dog, so it wasn't like I was trying to understand my dog. We didn't have any pets, but I remember being like old and going over for kids' house and be like, I think he's hungry. I'm like, oh, so and so's house. Their dog says they're hungry in a different kind of bark. Like,
I was very confused. You kept saying that your oldest was. He would like certain things. He likes this music. He doesn't like this. And he was 4 months old.
You're like,
how
do you know? Yeah.
But now I get it. Now I understand where
there's other ways to communicate.
And there are other ways to communicate. And you can tell by the way that they look up or they listen to something that they do like that.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm curious for this scene. Is
there a warg language?
Yeah. Are they making like kind of human speech sounds, just syllables that are put together in a way that we don't understand?
Is Gandalf just making this up? Like, he's like, look, the dwarves and Bilbo, they have no idea. They are not cultured like I am. I can say whatever I want it to be, and they'll just trust me. right?
Yep.
Like, for all we know, maybe these wolves are actually nice.
Yeah.
And Gandalf just doesn't like wolves. He's like,
They were
well,
trying to keep them warm by
they're like,
lighting.
hey, you guys, we just were letting you know the goblins are coming.
Yeah.
And Gandalf, he messes up. And so he starts he doesn't know how to speak warg either.
Yeah.
He starts attacking them. And of course, then they're upset.
Yeah.
But they actually.
It was a different dialect. But they were speaking ironically.
So yeah, I actually like this. Here's the new theory. Put this in the new History of the Hobbit book when you and I will write our updated version to it. That Gandalf actually does not speak warg. They actually were coming to warn them, but then did get angry once they were attacked with fire, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on their side.
I'm exactly the same way. You throw a blue sparkly pine cone at me that you can't extinguish,
I wouldn't be happy.
I'll call the goblins.
I
every
guess
single time.
our theory's a little bit undercooked here, no pun intended, because while this is happening, poor Dory is almost eaten by a warg.
Because he's helping Bilbo. They're close enough now that he gets down off the tree and then lets Bilbo stand on his shoulders to get in. And then even when the wolves are coming,
He doesn't give up, yeah.
Still waits until he's all the way up and then gets there and just misses getting.
I love this. Again, the dwarves don't have quite unique characters. I mean, we talked about like the most distinct one is outside of Thorin is maybe Bomber, and it's because he's fat and and later on he's going to like to sleep a lot. Remember when he falls asleep in the forest? Spoiler alert for Mirkwood. But but Dory here, I think, can represent a bit of all of the dwarves. I don't know if it's just him, where they are complaining, I don't want to go back for Bilbo, but also clearly they are courageous and they are selfless in some ways, because here is Dory putting himself in danger to save Bilbo. Again, I would assume that while he does now have a greater respect for Bilbo, it's not like what happened in the last 30 minutes all of a sudden, in my opinion, probably didn't change Dory's entire character. It wasn't like, oh, if this happened 30 minutes ago, he would have let him die. But now he's like, oh, we need him because he was a really helpful burglar. I think there is a little bit more, like, they're more complicated than just being a bunch of like grumpy old dwarves.
Yeah. And we're getting to see that complexity is starting to peek through more as
they
six
do.
chapters in.
And they have that sense of what's right and what's wrong. Even like, oh, we don't really like Bilbo. And I do wonder, had we heard the rest of the story before Bilbo jumped in, would they have said, all right, no, we'll go back. Like, I don't want to do it. We don't even really like him, but we know it's our duty as well. Like, would they have been able to be talked into that? Or would they even talk themselves into that? I think they actually might have.
Especially with Gandalf around.
Yeah. Well, we learned that wargs are not able to climb trees. And so the dwarves and Gandalf and Bilbo get into the trees, and we hear a little bit about that conversation, the one that Gandalf, well, at least this is Gandalf's translation. What does Gandalf say he's hearing?
His interpretation even.
Yes.
Gandalf explains that the goblins and the wargs often work together to do what are described as wicked deeds, and that a raid had been planned for that night. So not only is the timing pretty terrible that they walk into this place at night while the wolves are there, but the goblins are coming too.
Yes, and they were going to attack some. Are they hunters? Who are they again?
They're gonna raid.
Just some men. I think there's just some men out there with their families. I guess they're just kind of living out in the wild.
They raid, and then they try to get food or slaves to work for them, and then they share the plunder between the wargs and the
These
goblins.
woodsmen are just living out there, kind of on the fringes of society, and now they're kind of at the danger of these raids. So they do. You're right. They do. They were planning this, and the goblins don't show up, and we're like, well, we kind of know why they show up. Their king is dead, and there's been a huge kind of wild fight inside of their mountain.
You would not believe the day we're having.
Days we're having, because we didn't mention this.
Multiple days.
It's Thursday. They went in on Wednesday night. It's now Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday night. So yeah, they've been in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It was 3 days, because Gandalf says it was Tuesday, like Monday night, Tuesday morning when they went in. So it's been quite a long time.
Does it bother you that they use regular days of the week?
No, I like those because days of the week are also Norse. So I think it works out.
Okay.
I'm also not going. I'm going to trust that Tolkien also thought about that. He's like, no, that checks out. That one's good. Like, I think if it hadn't worked, because they, you know what? They also use the same months that we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting, because those are not obviously Norse. They've been around longer than, they've been around for millennia.
The months?
The months, yeah. Although you know about how we used to only have 10 months, right?
Yeah, and then the Caesars.
Yeah, old July and then August. They just went in there and were like, we're going to add some more in. And
Space this out a little bit.
now the month with Oct at the beginning of it is going to actually be the 10th month and not the 8th month.
Yep.
That's not
making
confusing.
Latin slightly harder for private schoolers around the country.
True, yeah, for classical children. They're like, wait a second. You're telling me that October is not the 8th month. Like, that is correct. All right, well, before we get too off topic, let's go back to the grenade launching that's about to occur here. Gandalf takes these, and we just watched this when we covered the movie on Patreon, which I don't think, have we mentioned that yet? We watched,
on Patreon, we covered the first 3 hours of the 9 hours Hobbit.
Yeah. If you've ever thought, you know what I would love is a 3 hour long podcast. Phil and I recorded a 3 hour long podcast.
We did it in real time. You can watch along.
Watch along with us.
Wherever DVDs are sold.
We watched a movie that neither of us particularly like, but I would say actually don't hate.
We enjoyed part one, didn't we?
The first part of the movie we did like.
Yeah, the first hour of part one.
You want to listen to 3 hours of Phil and I talking about a movie that both of us think is just then check it out. Go over to patreon.com/Narnia
which
podcast.
is my dad. Took him several car trips.
No, we've had a couple people have written and said they've listened to the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. Other people have also said, I did not listen to the whole thing. I listened to the first hour and was like, that's enough.
And I want my money back.
And we're like, it's too late. We already
Daniel already spent it.
Spent it on books. All right. Well, but I like that scene in the movie. I do like when they throw those. That was one of the scenes I don't like anything else except for the image of them throwing it. The rest of that scene is a huge mess. It's terrible.
Well, I do want to talk about Gandalf's trademark is this blue flame that he can make.
No, it's not in the movie. Blue flame.
Really?
No, they had like just regular orange fire.
Oh, they probably tested better.
Well, yeah, but he got these blue flames. He's starting to throw them down at the warg. I mean, it's a little violent here because like they're catching on fire. That fur is burning.
It burns in a different way. If even a spark gets on him, it continues to burn. It's not like the spark. It's not like the spark lands on them and then extinguishes itself because it goes out. It stays there, and so soon their entire backside is on fire and they're running around.
And this is causing quite a big stir. And then we have kind of a break in the text.
Because the eagles are watching.
Because the eagles are watching. Which, by the way, maybe we'll talk about it more in the next chapter because this character does have a name. But he is only named here as the Lord of the Eagles. The Lord of the Eagles, who watches this, is like, what's going on in the forest? I like that he kind of rolls his eyes like maybe you or I do as dads. You're downstairs, you hear the kids upstairs or something, and you're like, what's going on up there? Like, he seems more annoyed than even curious. You know, like, I hear wolves' voices. The goblins, are they at that mischief again? He's not. He's more just like, oh, my goodness.
He's literally above this.
Yes.
I will say there's something about the way that everything leads to the next thing in a way that kind of makes you think that something else is at play here. Maybe someone is orchestrating these events. Not saying that they have to happen this way, but they're kind of putting things together.
Yeah.
For example, they escape the goblins and then they're chased by wolves. But because of the interaction with the wolves, it creates so much commotion that by the time the goblins are there and they're also crafty and they're lighting the trees on fire to smoke people out.
Yep.
The eagles' attention was already. They already got it, and so now the eagles are coming to help.
Exactly, that's right.
Because usually you have to talk to a butterfly, and the butterfly has to fly away.
Has to go get them and stuff. No, so they do, but they do get the attention. And as the eagles look down, which by the way, just to go back to our early discussion, Tolkien even says eagles are not kindly birds. Some are cowardly and cruel, but this ancient race was the greatest of all birds. They were proud and strong and noble-hearted. But as they decide to kind of look into what exactly is going on tonight, and again, it even says the Lord of the Eagles filled with curiosity. They don't go just out of, they are noble-hearted, as we hear just a minute ago, but it's not like they go because, we got to go save some people. Right? He's like, we're just curious as to what's going on. But as they're flying closer and getting closer, they actually first notice the goblins before even Thorin and company do themselves. Which, by the way, we haven't mentioned this. I don't think Thorin has an entire line.
I don't
in
know
this
if his
chapter.
name's been mentioned more
I
than
don't
once.
know that his name is mentioned at all in this chapter. We got, if only there was a feature on a Kindle that would let us know. I don't think Thorin appears in chapter 6. Do you see anything?
I'm not seeing it.
Oh, yes, he does. He appears 4 times. It was when Dory says that Thorin was stabbing here and there and everywhere with Orcus, and he almost stabbed him. So Dory says that. At one point, Bilbo could just see Thorin's beard wagging beside him. And then when some of the eagles picked him up, trees, Bifur, Bofer, Bomber, and Thorin are in one tree, and Thorin does speak. He does speak. Right as they're coming up, he said, "He'll be eaten if we don't do something." And that's when Bilbo is left behind, go up the tree. So he does, but that's very minor for him in this chapter.
And obviously made a big impression on us.
Yeah, that he wasn't there at all. So the goblins are now showing up. They come, as you kind of alluded to a moment ago, they actually light there is fire, and they actually start lighting the trees on fire and kind of trying to literally smoke and burn out our heroes here. And they sing some fun songs as well, too.
Which we're going to recite for you.
I think we might have already read
to the tune of online sign, online sing.
I was like, much to everyone's benefit, I think we might have read what our capacity is for this chapter already.
Tell you what, if you support us on Patreon, we will produce an episode without us singing.
What happens, though, Phil, once the song is over?
The flames are under Gandalf's tree at this point. He's climbed to the top, and he has decided that he is going to go out with a bang and take some goblins with him. And he is just about to jump, and he has splendor flashing from his wand like lightning. And he's gonna jump right into the spears of the goblins, but then an eagle swoops in. It swoops and then sweeps him away.
Yeah,
and
he swoops in and sweeps him away. Yeah, and takes him out. And I think it's Bilbo holding on. Poor Dory. Holding on to Dory's ankles. Great line where Bilbo moans, my arms, and Dory groans, my legs, my legs.
my poor legs.
And they do fly away. And then they land inside of a nest. One of the funny things, I just want to mention it here because I think it's kind of a little bit of a silly exchange, but I'm into it, to be honest.
Is it the part where they think that they're prisoners?
That's exactly right.
Like it is so odd because it seems like it's about to escalate again.
And he's like, no, don't worry about that. It's like, well, then why'd you use that word? Like that. It's like Tolkien creates and again, we're not really critiquing Tolkien here, but he like creates a problem and then solves the problem in the very next paragraph. Like, oh, that wasn't a problem, by the way.
Right.
And
then Bilbo drank poison, but then he found the antidote, so it's fine.
That is what Lewis Carroll does at the very beginning of Alice, in many ways. So they get there, and as they're brought into the nest, one eagle's like, "Hey, the Lord of the Eagles says you got to bring the prisoners to the Great Shelf," and in the very next paragraph, it says, "Oh, by the way, he meant like because they were the prisoners of the goblins, not that they're their prisoners."
Yeah, we were just calling you prisoners because you used to be prisoners.
Yeah, and so they do go all make it to the Lord of the Eagles. They're brought there, and the Lord of the Eagles, he kind of owes Gandalf a favor of some kind. We're not told what it is, and Gandalf's like, "Hey, can you take us all the way to Erebor?" He's like, "No, that would kind of defeat the next few chapters. There's a lot of fun stuff that's going to happen."
Sorry, boss said no.
Yeah. WB says we gotta milk this thing for 3 movies, and if we take you there now, the movie's over. So we gotta. What do we say? Oh, so they're only going to take them as far as up to some woods because they want to stay away from both goblins and some of the men who will shoot them with arrows.
With arrows.
And that's pretty much the end of the chapter. They are laid down. They do nap here, or they sleep here. Bilbo does have a good sleep. They have some food to eat, and it's kind of, hey, all the adventures in the Misty Mountains have ended.
Yes. I love this part right at the end. I want to read this last 2 sentences. This is talking about Bilbo. He slept curled up on the hard rock more soundly than ever he had done on his feather bed in his own little hole at home. But all night he dreamed of his own house and wandered in his sleep into all his different rooms, looking for something that he could not find, nor remember what it looked like.
I like that a lot.
There are a couple of things that come to mind here. One is the fact that he sleeps on a hard rock. There's a little bit of a potential biblical reference here, using a rock as a pillow. And it's not an allegory. I'm not saying that there's a direct connection. It's interesting that is used at all, talking about having a hard rock to be a bed. But it's really the change that's come over Bilbo. He was such a creature of comfort that he wanted to go back. The group's leaving, and he wants to go back and get some stuff. And even though he doesn't have time to go back and get it, Gandalf gets it for him because he knows he needs to ease him into this. But now he's sleeping on a rock more soundly than at home.
He ever had, yeah.
This character is changing. We're now at the end of chapter 6. We're a full 6 chapters in.
It feels like this would be the perfect spot to be like, this is the first third of the book, right?
Yeah.
You should, if you were going to make a movie, you'd stop it here.
Just
So keep going.
I don't actually know what he's looking for in these rooms, what he's trying to find. One potential way to interpret this is he's kind of forgetting what that life. He can't even remember what he has in which room.
Yeah,
and it's starting to fade away because he is so completely being transformed into this next version of himself.
Well, that about wraps up this chapter, Phil. In our next episode, we're going to look at Chapter 7, Queer Lodgings, where we spend a little bit of time with Beorn, the shapeshifter, and we'll get one of the most famous scenes in the book where Gandalf will slowly, very slowly, introduce the entire company to that very unlikely ally. Any final thoughts before we... Today, actually, no Enchanted Epistle today. We're going to do some listener feedback today.
Enchanted emails.
Yeah, Enchanted emails. There you go. Any final things, though, for Chapter 6?
No, I'm looking forward to... Beorn's one of my favorites.
I love this next chapter a lot. Yeah. It's one of my absolute favorites. Well, I have 2 emails today. They're both a little bit shorter, and we haven't had emails, I don't think, at all this season. We've just been reading letters, but I thought it'd be fun to go back to some emails. The first one is about, actually they're both about Tolkien, but one's from last season, and one is then one of the very first emails we got for this season. We have an email here called Fairy Excuses from Calvin. He says, "Hello, Phil and Daniel. In the last episode of the past season," this is when we were covering Smith of Wootton Major, "you mentioned someone blaming what is before their eyes on an upset stomach. I'm not sure if this is what you were thinking, but the first thing I thought of was the interaction between Marley's ghost and Ebenezer Scrooge in Dickens' A Christmas Carol. When asked if he, Scrooge, believes in Jacob Marley's ghost, he replies that anything can affect one's stomach, and then goes on to list a few different foods." From a longtime listener, Calvin. Do you remember us saying this? I do remember at the time saying, what is this? There's something else that Tolkien's pulling from where he's like, you could just be a bit of undigested beef.
Yeah.
And not remembering what that was from. And Calvin came to our rescue here. It's in the very first
Dickens.
stave of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Great
Have
stuff.
you read it? I haven't read it.
I have read it
You probably
every
read it in
year
8th
for the
grade.
last 10 years at Christmas time.
Wow.
No, it lasts like 7 years. But yeah, when I taught 6th grade, I read it. And our current 6th grade also reads it. So a lot of times I have not read it in their classrooms with them, but I'll just be reading it when I know they're reading it. Great. It's only like 60 pages, and
okay.
It's very short.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, very short. There's 5 staves, and each stave is maybe 15 pages.
That's one of those ones where I've seen so many parodies of it.
Oh, you got to read the real thing.
that I didn't even realize I hadn't read the.
It's
real thing.
the only adaptation that's ever come close to being as good as Muppets Christmas Carol. That's like it's Charles Dickens. Obviously, his story is best. Then Muppets Christmas Carol. Then nothing else. Especially Jim Carrey's one. Do you ever see that one? That is not a good one. That was the one. It came out it was like the one. It was when 3D movies were big. Probably around the time that the first Hobbit movie came out.
Yeah.
It's not great.
No.
And Gollum himself, Andy Serkis, I think he directed or was in a version of A Christmas Carol.
Wow.
One of them. So, all right. Well, thanks, Calvin. That's really great. It's so helpful to remember
appreciate
that. I would not. I would have remembered it again this December when we get to it. Which actually, this episode might be coming out closer to December. But it would have. I'm glad that I did not have to wait all the way till December to get there.
Agreed.
All right, we've got another email. This one's called Dwarves and Dwarfs. Trying to pronounce the V and the F there. And this is from Lindsay. My first thought when you started on The Hobbit was, we're back, baby. Very excited to be in the Legendarium. Regarding dwarfs and dwarves, I know Tolkien called this an error, but I think his background as a medievalist influenced this decision. In Old English, the convention was to shift the F to V in the plural pronunciation, which was later put into spelling rules in Middle English. So wolf became wolva, W-O-L-V-A, which became wolves. Thief became thieva, and then later thieves. Wife became weeva, and then later wives. The rule also applied to elf, which followed that same Old English convention, with elf or aelf becoming, aelf, and then later elves. In Old English, I love this lesson we're learning right here. In Old English, the word for dwarf was dwerog, D-W-E-O-R-G, or dwerorg. The plural was dwerorgas. So the F to V convention did not apply because of how it was spelled. However, if you were to apply that rule to its modern equivalent dwarf, you go from dwarf to dwarves with a V rather than to dwarfs with an F. This may have been a historically incorrect decision, but it certainly feels linguistically accurate, especially when you're in a world of elves as well.
Yes.
I love that. This is from Lindsay. Then she wrote, P.S. Thought exercise. When you think elves and dwarves, Legolas, Elrond, Galadriel, Thorin, Balin, and Gimli come to mind, right? Tell me, when you hear elfs, E-L-F-S, and dwarfs, don't you think of the Keebler cookies, Rice Krispies,
I was going to say the first thing,
and Snow White's weird little bachelor friends? This is so perfect.
The first thing I think of is breakfast cereal and cookies.
It is true. It's like the V makes it sound more like high fantasy. The Fs make it sound like Keebler elves.
Yes.
Which are, again, I think they're spelled, that's Keebler elves, not elves, but still, that is kind of how that has become culturally distinctive in a way.
Yep.
That's so fun, Lindsay. Thank you as well for this great lesson. It's
Yeah.
helpful to understand. I mean, there really is a lot of, and some of this does make sense. It's not like Tolkien now. Again, we all use kind of the Tolkien version of dwarves. But even at the time, again, we just read, spent years reading through Narnia. Lewis always says dwarfs, always with an F. He does not just change to the V convention. Yeah. And Lewis also cared about these kind of things too.
Yes.
So. Well, that is our episode for today. I'm really excited for next episode, Chapter 7, to get with Beorn, one of my all-time favorite characters in all of Tolkien. Phil, would you go ahead and close us out then for the day?
Absolutely. This episode is made possible by our patrons over at patreon.com. If you'd like to support if you'd like to support our shoes.
That's what we're using. We haven't mentioned that. Patreon is just our shoe. Phil got really into sneakers recently. So
we are barefoot until.
Have we ever made fun of the fact that you always wear those weird shoes all the time?
Yes, you did that.
It's come up on the show
multiple times. But the people you work with
are
converting in larger and larger numbers.
I have always given Phil a little bit of grief. No offense to people who do this, who are listeners of the show. He wears the, what are they called?
They're the brand I wear is Zeros.
They don't sponsor the show. They're
zero drop shoes.
Zero drop shoes. They're like flat shoes.
Very flat shoes. Very little support.
They look a little funny.
There's no button you press that makes you jump higher.
Yeah. And so Phil wears them, and he's always like, these are the best shoes ever. You got to wear them. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's,
50 years in the future, Everyone is going to wear these shoes. They're going to eat vegetarian. They're going to drive electric cars. And they're going to be so much kinder.
All right.
We're just not there yet.
The thing was funny is then I hired 2 new PE teachers at our school, and they're fantastic. They're really great. And both of them wear these same shoes. And they're like, yeah, you got to wear these shoes. I'm like, oh, man, Phil was really on to something, I guess. The professionals are wearing them now, too. So
a friend of my wife she mentioned to someone that I played chess, and then I got together with this friend of this other friend who, it was this weird connection. And so I go to meet up at a park, and we're just going to play a game of chess, and that's kind of it. And I'm like, is this going to be awkward? How is this going to go?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing he says is, are you wearing zeros?
You're like, we're going to be friends.
And it's so weird because it's such an obscure thing, but it has a very passionate following.
Sure.
All right, on to the next sentence. If you'd like to support the show, you too can then listen to a bonus episode each month along with other rewards, including art and stickers. Special thanks goes to John
Have we
Marr.
sent out the...
Have you ordered them yet?
No.
Okay. So as soon as Daniel
I will order the
start
stickers.
supporting now, because then you'll be able to get the stickers for this
Well,
one.
I would say by the time... Again, I think this episode comes out in November. We've got months to get there. So...
Yes, that is in 2 weeks.
That's in... Yeah, that's actually... Yeah, it's
no pressure
it just
to the guy
became
has to
October,
write
so
all
never
the
mind.
addresses. Special thanks goes to John Marr, Emily Wakefield, Ryan Smith, Andrew Trophy, Becca Brown, Christiana Lyon, and Ian Wooten for supporting us at our top tiers. Listener feedback can be sent to hello@lampostlistener.com. Voicemails can be left at 406-646-6733. Daniel just renewed our
Yeah, that's
phone
right. I
number,
just renewed the number
so we're
again.
good for another 3 months.
Yeah, why do you have to do that every 3 months now? Or like 6 months? I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, we've had this phone number for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
You did not used to have to renew it all the time.
It's because it's free and there's a limited number of phone numbers.
So they just don't want to run out, I guess. Because
Well-
now I have to pretty much text on it every 3 months.
Yeah, which is so hard.
I mean, it's just
It's a free
annoying
phone
to
number.
log into it and stuff.
You too can then, you can find all the previous episodes, links, and book information at lampostlistener.com. A review on Apple Podcast will help other listeners find the show and join our read-through. Thanks for coming along on this journey, and we will be back soon.